Back when we first got married, we were a young couple living in the big city, and we wanted to check out this church. So I found out the hours for the church and went out there, took the subway, went to visit the church, and got to the building. It was a little congregation that rented from a Presbyterian church, and I got to the building and went up to what I thought was the main door, and I pulled on the door, and it was locked. I was like, well, this is the time that the answering machine said. It was pre-internet. And I walked around the side of the church, thought I'd try another door, right? Maybe they're just kind of meeting in a different part of the church, and I try another door, and this one opened up, but I go inside, and it's completely dark in the church. Now, most people would have kind of called it good at that point and just gone home, but I was determined to go to church that night, and so instead of walking away from that dark building, I walk through the church with my little flashlight trying to find my way in this completely dark building. I'm looking for some door in the dark, imagining that I'm going to come up to this door and open it and find out, like, oh, here's everybody. They all came in from the other side, and we'd all have a good laugh. I'm probably lucky that I didn't run into a door head on and get knocked out. You know, the Presbyterians would show up on Monday morning and find me laying there. But here I am walking through the dark, trying to find the church, trying to find what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this door in the dark, and I never did find them. It turned out they didn't meet that particular Sunday. But, and they told me afterwards, it's a good thing that no one did find you in there, because the Presbyterians had been broken into a couple of times and might have called the cops on you. But there I was, searching for a door in the dark, looking for a group of people who weren't there, searching for this door in the dark that I never found. And maybe you've had this experience, searching for a door in the dark. Maybe you're there right now. And in the passage that we heard from the scriptures today, we heard Jesus' words to the church in a city called Laodicea. And what we see him telling that church is that he opens doors. Jesus opens doors. And Jesus tells them that not only does he open doors, but if they open the door to him, he will come in and sit down and eat with them. If they open the door to Jesus, then he can open other doors for them, the places where they're stuck, the places where they're wandering around in the dark. Jesus opens doors. And this shouldn't surprise us. I mean, not far above, in this same passage in the book of Revelation, Jesus says that he has the keys of death. Death couldn't hold him behind its bars. Death can't keep him. Jesus is beyond death. He says he has the keys to death. And then he also says that he has the keys of King David. And it says here in Revelation that Jesus opens doors and no one can shut them. He shuts doors and no one can open them. Jesus carries the keys. And when you look at the way people painted Jesus thousands of years ago, they would often paint the resurrection of Jesus, and there would be these keys. And if you look there, you can kind of see it down at the very bottom. There's Jesus. He's being resurrected, and he's pulling Adam and Eve out of the grave, right? He's rescuing humanity. And there are all these keys and locks just kind of blowing everywhere down at the bottom, because he is the one who holds the keys. Jesus opens the doors. And in another place, in fact, in the Gospel of John, Jesus not only opens doors, Jesus says, I am the door. He says he's the door to the sheepfold. He says the sheep will come in and find pasture through him. And he spells out what he means by that a little bit later when he says that everyone who believes in him will have life and have it in abundance. So he's the one who opens the door on that abundant life. Jesus has the keys to the doors. Jesus opens doors. Jesus is the door to the good and abundant life. And we got to think about what that means a little bit, because we can kind of get the wrong idea about what it means to say that Jesus opens the door to the abundant life. I mean, Jesus is not a resume booster. He is not our ticket to success. So following Jesus will not guarantee you the good job and the supportive spouse and the perfect children who always obey and pick up their Legos and the perfect yard with no dandelions. Following Jesus does not guarantee that Hallmark stamped life. It just doesn't work like that. Or at least not exactly. Jesus is not our life coach. But at the same time, following Jesus is about real life. It's about what's going on in the neighborhood. Following Jesus is about family and work and kids and putting food on the table. It's about what we do for a living. And if following Jesus doesn't somehow connect to what we do every day, if following him doesn't mean something for our day-to-day life, then we've got to ask if it's true. And so when we say that Jesus opens doors, I think a lot of times what we're just talking about is our experience. Jesus opened the door for me to find a job, or Jesus opened the door for me to meet my spouse. Jesus opened the door to something that was good and right and very beautiful. I think that is what we're saying. The doors that Jesus opens are going to be the doors into life. I mean, what else would they be? If you study the Bible, one of the things that you notice right away in the Bible is that it is very practical. The Bible is a practical book. It's earthy. It's concerned with how people live, how they treat each other, how they live with God. A lot of the Old Testament laws are about doing justice with one another, caring for people, being truly alive as human beings. The Bible is about dust and rain, children and land. It's blood, sweat, and tears. The Bible talks about human concerns, life and death concerns. It's not some spiritual life that the Bible talks about lived off in some spiritual place. It's life lived fully and truly right where we are. And so if Jesus is the one who opens doors, then yeah, I mean, some of those doors that we're talking about, they do have to be those everyday doors. They're places where we're hung up in life, and we need some help to get through. These are the places where we just say to him, Jesus, open this door for me. Have you ever asked him that? Have you ever prayed that? Jesus, open this door. Have you ever been at a place in your life where you don't know what to do, you don't know where to go, you're searching for a door in the dark, and you say, Jesus, open this door? Have you ever prayed that? I have. Sometimes we really just need an open door. And stuff happens in life. Things fall apart. Things do not go as planned. Jesus, I need you to open this door. This has been my experience. I have stumbled into God's kindness in so many ways, in so many times. I am undeserving of all the goodness that he has opened a door onto for me. He's put people in our path. He's helped us out of some sticky situations. Jesus has been at so many places in my life where I have been searching for a door in the dark, and then a door just opens. Before we came here, we served for a year in the country of Peru, and for a little while I would go out and do these Bible teaching sessions in this little village that was like, half hour or so outside of the city, the edge of town. And I'd go out there, and it was no problem getting out because there were buses that you just go to this square and you can grab a bus out. But when I'd come back, it would be night. And what you do is you just go and stand on the side of the road, and you see the car lights coming, and you just kind of wave them down. And sometimes somebody will stop. There might be a bus. There could be a little car that's picking up passengers. Somebody will stop and let you on, and you pay them some money, and you sit in this dark vehicle, driving down this dark road, looking up at these alien constellations, heading back to town. And I remember so many times I'd be standing out there saying, Lord, I know this is a little thing. This is so small, but I sure would like to go home tonight. I sure would like to sleep in my bed tonight. Lord, please let there be a car for me. And I got home every time, right? Waving down a car. And that's little stuff, okay? That's just finding a ride home. But when I talk to people, this is the kind of thing that I hear about, right? That Jesus has been faithful to open a door at the right time. There's the right person, there's the right connections, the right place. Suddenly everything comes together. That car drives by, the door is open. And an open door doesn't mean there's no struggle. And in so many ways, faith is struggle. There's the struggle with our own doubts. There's the struggle with our challenges. There's the struggle with our demons. Struggle with everything that conspires to keep us from living authentically and truly before God. The people of Israel, they got their name from struggle. Israel, that word, that name, Israel means a struggle. I mean, there's this man in the Old Testament, his name is Jacob, and his people lived in tents with him, and they moved around a lot. They followed their herds, and one night Jacob, he says to his family, he sends his herds across the stream, sends his family across the stream. He just wanted to be alone for a while. Maybe he had to think some things over and needed the night and the solitude. I kind of know what he feels like. And then God comes to him. There's Jacob alone on the other side of this stream. His family's on the other side. He's alone. And God comes to him, and the scriptures tell us that all night long he wrestled and struggled with God. And the next morning, God gives him the name Israel, which means the one who wrestles with God or who struggles with God. So Jacob's experience of God, his foundational experience, was the experience of struggle. And so when Jesus opens a door, that doesn't mean there's no struggle. Life worth living is going to involve struggle. When Jesus opens a door for us, things change, things happen, there's potential, there's possibility. The question becomes, do we dare to step through the door that he's opened? In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, this man that Jesus chose to go and spread his news, Paul wrote a letter. And in that letter, Paul said that he has decided to stay in the ancient city of Ephesus because there is a wide open door for great work here. That's what he wrote. There's a wide open door to do some great work. I'm going to stay. Now, Paul maybe could have included a little PS, a little postscript at the bottom of his letter. When he said that there was a wide open door to do great work, he sort of left out a few details. He did preach the word of God in Ephesus. He connected with a lot of people. But he sort of forgot to mention a couple of things, one of them being that he got on the wrong side of the powers that be in Ephesus. They didn't like his message. And there was also that little matter of the riot that his preaching caused. They almost tore the city of Ephesus apart. So an open door doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to be nice and smooth. And the reality is that when we're asking Jesus for an open door, I think we're actually looking for something deeper. It's not just about getting things to work out. When we ask Jesus to open a door for us, we're really asking him to open a door to a life that's lived truly, a life that's lived with purpose, a life that counts for something. I mean, that's what I'm asking for anyway. That's my hope, that at the end of my life will have counted for something. I mean, who cares what car I drive or whatever? And when I think about this, I think about the late pastor and writer and civil rights activist Will Campbell. And Pastor Campbell grew up in Mississippi in the 20s and 30s, and after leaving to study in some other parts of the country, Jesus opened a door for him to return to Mississippi and try to do some good during the civil rights movement. And he served as director of religious life at the University of Mississippi until he was forced out of that position. And then he began working for the National Council of Churches, organizing for civil rights in the South. And what makes Will Campbell such an interesting person is that he had not only a love for the African American community that he was trying to struggle alongside of in the South, but he also had a love for folks in the Ku Klux Klan. And he famously said once that Mr. Jesus died for the bigots too. And Jesus opened a door for Campbell to be there and to be involved. And it was a door open to life-changing and meaningful work, but it was not a door that was open to ease and opportunity. And in fact, Campbell's brother was constantly worried for him because he would get these death threats. And he said, "Can't you just go find a job somewhere else? Can't you just move to another part of the country?" But I think Mr. Campbell realized that if he didn't walk through that door, if he didn't go and do what Jesus had made possible for him to do, that in some way he'd be missing out. In some way he'd be unfaithful. You see, when Jesus opens a door, it's not just about giving us a nice opportunity. Jesus is always knocking on the door of our lives. He always is opening a door to something that's much deeper, and he wants us to and he wants to enter into our life. He wants to be a part of our life. He wants us to live with purpose. And the scriptures say that Jesus stands at the door and knocks. Jesus says that if we open the door, he'll come right in and sit down to supper with us. And this is what we have to know. That door that Jesus is knocking on, the door to our lives, he won't barge through it. He'll knock on the door, but he will not knock it down. He's not that kind of guy. We have to open the door. It only opens from the inside. And look, it can be kind of scary to open that door. I mean, we might not even be sure what we're getting ourselves into if we open the door. What will Jesus do? Why is he knocking on my door anyway? What does Jesus want with me? You know, we might sometimes be tempted to say, who are you and what do you want when he's knocking on that door? But look, Jesus tells us what he wants. He wants to come in. He wants to sit down. He wants to eat with us. And in the Bible, sitting down with someone and eating with them isn't just about eating. It's about hospitality. It's about conversation. It's potentially transformational. And I think that's what Jesus ultimately wants, to come into our lives and transform us. You see, we need Jesus. Jesus is saying, you need me in your life. You know, the church in Laodicea wasn't totally convinced that they needed Jesus. They brag that they're rich, that they've got it made, that they need nothing from anyone. The church in Laodicea did what most of us do when we're feeling comfortable and well-fed. They forgot about God. And way back in the Old Testament, Moses warned the people of Israel, and he told them that when they get to the promised land and they start living large, they're going to face temptation. It's the temptation of forgetting about who got them there in the first place. It's human nature, right? When things go well, we forget about God. We're making money, the kids are doing okay, life's a beach, or close enough. But when something happens, something goes wrong, that hurricane blows through, then we're looking for God. And Jesus says to the church in Laodicea, look, you think everything's fine. You think you're rich and you've got it made, but you don't realize that spiritually you're wearing tattered clothing. You're a pitiful, blind beggar, threadbare and homeless. You're not seeing things the right way because you're not paying attention to what matters most in life. Jesus says, open the door and let me in. We were moving once, and we had done all the work of schlepping these boxes into our apartment and had our furniture kind of there in a jumble in the apartment and stacks of boxes everywhere. And it was just laying there as we worked to get it sorted out. And I remember the little neighbor girl came over through our open door and stood there in the door and just gazed in with big eyes and said, wow, she was so impressed by all of this landscape of boxes and furniture. And she looks in and says, can I come in and look at your stuff? This is the thing. Jesus is knocking, and if we open the door to him, he's going to want to come in and look at our stuff. He's going to want to come in and sit down and hang around a little bit. He's going to want to strike up a conversation with us and say, hey, noticed you got a big box of anger over there. Hey, what are you planning on doing with that stack of regret that you've been carrying along? Where are you going to put that curio of fears? If we let Jesus through that door, he's going to come in and look at our stuff, and he's going to ask it about it. Hey, can I come in and look at your stuff? Why do we carry around that stuff anyway? You know, I think a lot of times we store this stuff in the hollow places inside of us, and Jesus is saying, you know, those hollow places would be a great spot to sit down, talk it over with me, maybe have some lunch. The church in Laodicea didn't really think they had anything to deal with. They figured they were doing pretty well already. You know, they're nice, middle-class people. They had everything they needed. And what Jesus told the church was that no matter how rich and comfortable they are on the outside, what will count in the long run is the riches that they've got on the inside. That's why he tells them to buy gold from him, buy clothes from him. That's why he prescribes medicine for their eyes, because Jesus knows that they've got to change their perspective, start to see things his way, from his point of view. And that all starts with opening the door to him. So what about you? Where are you at? Do you have a door in your life that you need Jesus to open? Is there a place where you're stuck? Or more importantly, is Jesus knocking at a door in your life and you need to let him in? Maybe some of you will remember this, but a couple of years ago, there was this terrible tornado that blew through the community of Washington, Illinois. And Washington, Illinois, I don't know if you remember this, but it's actually right down the road from where I grew up. And in fact, my mother's side of the family is from Washington. And so we went over to visit right after that tornado, and we went to see my grandparents in Washington. And so we drove through this part of town that had been completely destroyed, direct hit by the tornado. The trees were ripped up. There was debris strewn everywhere. Homes were knocked down to the foundations. Some of the houses, the walls and roof were gone, and all you could see was the flat of the entrance floor, the first floor. It was horrible. It was totally laid bare. And as we drove through this neighborhood, there was this one house that kind of sticks in my mind because everything there was destroyed. The trees and the walls and the roof and the windows, it was all gone. But what was left was the door frame and a door. That must have been some door. But everything was gone except the door frame and the door. And I wonder if it's like that for us sometimes. Life gives us a direct hit. Everything's ripped up. Debris is strewn everywhere. We've been shaken down to the foundations and we're stumbling around in the dark. And all that's left is the door before us. And that's when we hear the knocking. That's when we look at that door. Open up, says Jesus. I stand at the door and knock. Open up, and I'll show you where life with me leads. Amen.